Craig Smoak, West Virginia, the Mountaineers, and first-year head coach, or returning for a different part of the chapter of the Mountaineers in Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah, West Virginia, brand new and yet old era all at the same time. Very unique situation. Two of those situations in the Big 12, obviously, this year with Scott Frost and UCF. But they were 6-7 last year, made the bowl game, able to do that by getting a win in the next to last week of the season against UCF, and then eventually lost their regular season finale, only to go to the Scooters Frisco Bowl, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, and fall to Memphis and what would be the end of that particular era, and what was a close but entertaining game. So that's where we last left them, was as the losing side of things in the Frisco Bowl. But now obviously a lot has changed since. Oh, look, Paul just came out of the closet. He literally came out of the closet. That's why I said that. But
were you over there with your people?
Yeah. No, listen. Yes, it's a closet, not the proverbial closet.
We have three of them too.
All right. So West Virginia, Rich Rod's back following last year's really like this kind of roller coaster, disgruntled sort of atmosphere that was surrounding West Virginia. Now it seems like it's. I mean, I don't know. We haven't checked in fully and probably won't for a while, but it seems like it's sunshine and rainbows and all of that. So what can Rich Rod actually do, and what kind of schedule are they looking at this year? Well, they have a down-the-middle schedule, 6 home games, 6 road games, and I didn't know the way to put this. I guess it was a day or two ago when we had a team that I think goes home and away, but no homestand is the best way to summarize that. There is no homestand
a baseball term
on this schedule because they do play back-to-back road games at one point, but they do not play back-to-back home games at any point. So that is one thing that is unique about this particular schedule for West Virginia, is the 6-6 format, which we have not seen that across the board, but also the no back-to-back home games. So they open up with Robert Morris on Saturday, August the 30th. And they don't have all Saturdays. There is one Friday game. They do avoid Thursdays, though. But Saturday, August 30th, Robert Morris. I mean, that'll be a feel-good. Like, they'll win 63-7, and everybody will feel great about Rich Rod being back. But then on Saturday, September 6th, they travel to Ohio for their first road trip of the season. As I mentioned, it goes on this back and forth for the most part. So to Ohio to take on the Bobcats there in week number 2, and then that will be followed up by the Backyard Brawl, Pitt and West Virginia, and what will be, I believe, the 108th meeting is what I wrote down between Pittsburgh and West Virginia. So back to back to back, and they will have a couple more games we'll get to before they get to their actual first bye. But there is the non-conference, Robert Morris at home, a trip to Ohio, and then the Backyard Brawl there at their home site there in Morgantown, which ought to be a raucous atmosphere. So that's how things will kick off. And obviously, you would expect them to be 2-0, but if Rich Rod can roll in and get that 3-0 start and beat Pitt right out of the gates, Pitt, then that would obviously have people going gaga pretty quickly up there in West Virginia.
It's amazing they didn't play for a decade, Pitt and West Virginia. They played 108 times. You're right, when they play this year. And they didn't play for 11 or 12 years. And that was such a big part of their schedule last year to start the year off, was that motions of playing Pitt, and it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, nope. You should never go through a year where that game doesn't get played. It should be written in any future amendments to the Constitution. We should codify rivalries like that one, and it's great. So I mean this is a good. They should be at least 2-1. Pitt, if Eli Holstein, Pitt's a weird team because with Eli Holstein, 6-0. Without Eli Holstein, 0-7. So we'll see. If he stays healthy, then
what a weird year
tough.
That was. Yeah. By the way, they didn't play for a long time because they were Pittsburgh, the Big East, and how that thing broke apart. And so they both left various places, Pitt to the ACC and West Virginia to the Big 12, and man, they didn't play each other for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, there was a good little break in the action, but they'll play 4 years in a row as of this year. So, I mean, that's kind of in the past at this point. But, 2022, they resumed it. Pitt got the win there at home. Then West Virginia returned serve at home 2 years ago. And then last year, Pitt obviously getting the win. So since they've resumed, Pitt, the home team has won each of these three meetings so far. So now rolling back to Morgantown, maybe it should play in their favor. So that's where they are as far as the non-conference. 2-1 is all but a guarantee. 3-0 is there as a possibility, but then still no break. They will roll into Saturday, September the 20th, and open Big 12 play at Kansas. Then the following week, back at home, they will take on Utah, and then their final game before their first break of the season, so they will have played 6 games in a row to start the season. They will play that one non-Saturday contest that I mentioned Friday night at BYU. So you get the whole Provo Friday night experience. They're right in the middle of the schedule as your 6th consecutive game, but you do get a break after this get 15 days because you'll play on that Friday. So you'll have a big old time for a breather there following the BYU road trip. But, yeah, you got Pitt, you got road trip to Kansas, road trip to BYU on a Friday night, Utah at home. So, that's the first stretch of the season for Rich Rodriguez and his Mountaineers.
It's a long trip to Provo, a couple of time zones. Of course, that's part of college sports, as we discussed with John Wilner. But a Friday night in Provo.
That's not what I want to see on my schedule, honestly, especially just with the expectations that BYU is also anticipating being pretty good. So it's like one thing when it was a couple years ago and you're like, damn, this crowd and but like add in that they're actually pretty good on top of that, and that's a recipe for maybe getting your first loss or your second loss or whatever the case may be, or getting a massive win. But that'll definitely be tough because that'll be a unique atmosphere.
All right.
Yeah, I mean this is when you jump out of it like Pitt, Kansas, Utah, BYU, that's tough. But they do get 2 of those games in Morgantown, which is classically a terribly difficult place to play for many, and for Utah especially to come all the way over there. I think that would be that. So.
Is that the longest stretch to start the year without a bye? And I know we've done 16 teams, but it seems like everyone's had kind of one early. I don't know, Colorado might have had a long stretch.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a couple of others maybe that have like a 6 or 7, maybe not more than 6, but I think there's a couple of others that we've done off the top of my head that have had that. So after the BYU road trip, you get a break finally. 15 days from that game until your next road trip, which is at UCF. So you will head on down to Orlando on Saturday, October the 18th. Then you turn around and finally back at home. It'll be your first home game in nearly a month because you will have had that Utah game, and then you travel to BYU, and then you get the bye, and then you go to UCF, and so finally you're back home nearly a month later and taking on TCU, which ought to be a pretty competitive team this year. The following week, November the 1st, you go to Texas, and not as far south as you can go, but pretty South Texas there with the city of Houston and the Cougs. Saturday, November the 8th, you will be back at home against Colorado. Following weekend, back on the road, as I mentioned, back and forth. Except for the 2 road trips right there in the middle with the bye week sandwiched in between. So back on the road, you get the reigning Big 12 champion Arizona State Sun Devils. And then finally to close it out, You will have your second bye week after that Arizona State game, and then you will have that 2 weeks to prepare for your regular season finale, which sees you at home against Texas Tech, which for all we know, that could be like play to get in the Big 12 title game for one or both schools. But we do expect Tech to be pretty good. So you get Arizona State and Tech those final 2 weeks of the regular season schedule, but with a bye week sandwiched in between there. So a very late bye week, but you may need it all to get ready for what could be a pretty formidable Texas Tech team. So there you go. The teams they don't play, I had it written down just a second ago over here. I thought I did. What did I do with that?
Can I give them?
Yeah, go ahead. I thought I had it, but yeah, go ahead, I guess.
Baylor, Arizona. You mentioned TCU already, right?
Iowa State.
Iowa State, Cincinnati.
Here we go. Arizona, Baylor, Cincinnati, Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State. So
right.
Arizona, Baylor, Cincy, Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State. So I think of the teams you expect to be pretty good, Baylor, Iowa State, K-State would be the ones that jump out there. But again, it's a new year. We don't really know that. Arizona struggled mightily a year ago. Brent Brennan could be on the hot seat. Cincinnati, same situation, although had some ebbs and flows. And then Oklahoma State, I mean, that's 3 games right there. All the coaches might get fired if they don't have better years between Arizona, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. So you don't face any of those 3, which could be a drawback. But you do get to avoid Iowa State, K-State, and Baylor, depending on how you look at them.
I think the game I'm looking forward to most on West Virginia's schedule, and maybe UCF's as well, is the Run It Back Bowl on October 18th.
The 2 head coaches playing each other who have just returned to their old stomping grounds.
Yeah. The run, like Ren Baker and Terry Mahajer can argue about who had that idea first.
Right.
Did they play UCF and West Virginia much at all before UCF became part of the Big 12?
I don't know. I mean, like, it's been a long.
I could have just
definitely
Googled
not using anything like that, but no, they've played 4 times. They played the last 2 years. Obviously they've been Big 12 mates for a couple of years, but they played the last 2 years, and they played in 03 and 04. Those were the only other 2 meetings. Rich Rod was the head coach for both of those games, whereas UCF had Mike Krzyzek, and then you had George O'Leary's first year there in Orlando. But West Virginia's won all 4 of the meetings between those 2 teams. Shout out to Winsipedia, as always, for always coming through in the clutch for questions like that. But, they've played a handful of times.
I tell you what, the bye or the off week, it's not a bye, the off week between Arizona State and then hosting Texas Tech will set up perfectly when Rich Rod takes them to an Arizona State-type run into the college football playoff, and so they'll have that break right before the run begins.
Okay.
I said it.
Yeah, I will say on the Backyard Brawl, mention that it's going on like its 4th consecutive year. There is going to be another break in the contract, but they have already signed the new deal, and it will resume again in 2029. So I feel like that's one of those you should, if you had your way, you would want to play that probably every year. But it is going to take a brief pause, so enjoy it this season because you won't see it again for another 3 or 4 years. And hell, by the time we get there, that's when all this other stuff will be popping off. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they're in the same conference at that point, but this will be the last Backyard Brawl for a few years. So, yeah, I think I find them really interesting because I know Rich Rod's a good coach. Jacksonville State was really good last year, and he knows West Virginia. So
he knows.
I feel like they could be pretty good pretty quick. I think this is a reasonable schedule. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some tough road trips. Going out to Provo on a Friday night's definitely at the top of the list of the toughest road trips. Going to Orlando, going to Tempe. But, I mean, I could see a path definitely to a bowl game, and I think a lot will probably hinge on that Backyard Brawl game, and we'll definitely have a good idea sort of where they are there. But bowl game, absolutely a possibility. Winning the Big 12, I mean, I'm not going to go there right now knowing what we don't know. But I don't think it's at all an impossibility to see Rich Rod hit the ground running there and have a pretty good amount of momentum throughout next season that they can build off of pretty quickly. The guy, he's been successful. He
plays an exciting brand of football. He knows what he needs. And in the end, they're going to end up with a guy that they get in there that comes in as a quarterback. I know that they have returning some talent from now, but he's going to get another guy that is – I don't think you're going to get a Pat White.
Well, he's got Nico Markey already.
You're right. But he's going to have a run where he has good quarterback play, and they will be hopefully for West Virginia fans back.
Yeah. So West Virginia, I'd say bowl game seems like it should be a certainty. You accomplished that last year, and I don't think this is a situation where the program's like starting over from scratch by any means. I think that they're looking to just ascend. So. You have some things to make up for. You lose a Wyatt Milam. You lose some good players. But definitely on paper, which is what this entire exercise is, just taking a look at the schedule, it's got some fun moments, some fun games, some fun road trips, and definitely some winnable games.